Hello and welcome to the Bottom Shelf Horror Podcast, the show where a couple of cheap bastards talk horror over a couple of cheap drinks. Today we are going to be taking a look at Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, released last year in 2021. We do want to warn you that there will be spoilers throughout this episode. We're not going to be trying to hold back or anything. We're going to talk about what comes to our mind, so just want to give you a warning and consider yourself warned.
Last Night in Soho follows Eloise as she moves into London to pursue her dream of becoming a fashion designer. She finds that London is not as glamorous as she thought, as people such as her new roommate are horrible company. She moves into a private space that she is renting from an old lady, and when she goes to sleep, she seemingly goes back in time to 1960 Soho, following around a young up-and-comer named Sandy. As Eloise, Sandy also learns that Soho is not everything as she'd ever dreamed, as there are people in the city who can turn dreams into nightmares.
Yeah, so that's just a brief synopsis of the movie. We are going to do a quick recap of the drinking game we made for this, and I guess first we'll tell you about the drinks that we made for Last Night in Soho. Do you want to start with your drink and what you made and the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so my drink is called the Shandy. Obvious inspiration from Britain heritage, I guess you could say.
It's where it's kind of
it's where it gets its roots from.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also known as a Radler.
Yeah,
I've seen them they're you can have them non-alcoholic and they're 0.5% if you don't want to drink, for people that want alcohol without having alcohol. But this one's 2.5%. It's literally just Coors Light and lemonade. There's several versions of it, such as grapefruit, orange juice, ginger ale,
I'd say almost any fruity
yeah.
fruity soda or any clear soda like ginger ale, Sprite anything
too.
That works well with it. And then we got a slightly less desirable drink, which is, it's in the movie quite a bit. Sandy orders it a lot as the drink of choice for her. It's the Vesper Martini. It's most famous from originating in James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gin, vodka, and dry vermouth. So there's no holding back on the liquor. It's got a pretty strong taste. Recommend sipping it, but it's just straight out of the movie, so we had to include it.
Yeah. And what's your thoughts on both drinks?
I mean, it goes without saying, yours is much tastier, much more refreshing.
Yeah.
Won't get you that drunk, considering it is about 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Mine it doesn't taste good, but it's like taking 4 shots in one drink.
Yeah.
So it's gonna get you messed up, give you a nice little buzz, even just having one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends what you're looking for. This obviously doesn't taste great.
Yeah, I've been working on this for an hour.
I mean, so have I, and I'm over half done. It's deceiving, though. It kind of looks like I'm just a quarter done, but the glass shrinks as it goes down. So, it's a bit deceiving, the martini glass. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I guess that's the drinks we made, and we should probably recap the drinking game quick before we get into the movie itself.
Of course.
So, the drinking game rules. We'll quickly go through all the rules, and if we have any points, we'll bring those up. But, I'll just list them off quick here. So, first rule is death. Gave us 11 sips. I think a little bit higher than average in terms of most drinking games. Second rule is screams, cries, and yells. Gave us 15. A little bit lower than average, but still a good amount. Number 3, somebody drinks. So, whenever they drink anything, it's happening throughout the movie. And that gave us 10 sips. Rule number 4, it's whenever somebody makes an advance on another person. So kind of hitting on another person. It's usually Sandy for most of the movie, I'd say.
Yeah.
That gave us 14 sips. Rule number 5, it's when Ellie's mom is seen or mentioned, and this gave us 10 sips. It's always in ghost form that we see her.
Yes.
We never talked about that in our drinking game video. We just didn't want to have any spoilers, I guess.
Oh, exactly. Let's move on to rule number 6 here, which is whenever the shadow people are seen. Kind of in brief glimpses for the most part. Definitely heavy loaded towards the end of the movie for sure. Whenever Ellie wakes up, which is generally her waking up from her Soho visions.
Yep.
Either she's disappointed to be out or happy to be out, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, I'd say most of the time she's happy to be out.
Yep. Well, I mean, beginning, like, first, like, 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah, in the beginning, for sure. She always wants to be out. But then as soon as she starts trying to...
Sorry, always wants to be in the dreams. First 45 minutes, for sure.
Yeah, she wants to be in them, sorry.
Yeah.
But as soon as she starts seeing some shady shit going on, that's when she always wants to be out of them, and she's almost thrust into them more regularly.
Yes, definitely. Move on to rule number 8, which is whatever fashion designs being done, model talked about or referenced. You can see her clear inspirations come from Sandy and her dress.
Oh, yeah.
Which I feel just comes from a lot of the, what do you call it? Not set design.
Costume design?
Costume design. That's the word I'm looking for. Beautiful costumes.
And we'll get into that a little bit when we get into the production of the movie. But, yeah, this is just the overall, I guess, ambition of Eloise. Yeah. And she's chasing after her dream to follow in her mom's footsteps. Again, which we'll get into. Yeah. But, moving on.
Rule number 9 is whenever the old man is seen, which was 9 sips as well. Not too much to say about this. We'll move on to the old man maybe in a little bit here. Pretty much a black, what's the word? Red herring throughout the movie?
Red herring, yeah.
I was about to say black herring. No, red herring for most of the movie. Anyways, rule number 10 is whenever Sandy and Ellie are seen together at the same time, which is a total of 15 sips.
Yep.
Which everything came to a total of 113 sips, which is 4 cans, give or take.
Yeah, so I'd say for us, pretty average drinking game. If you're anywhere around 3 or 4 cans, it's pretty standard, I guess. It's kind of what you expect. If you're getting higher than that, it's getting, okay, this is a little bit harder, or less than that, it's like, oh, this is way too easy. But this, I think, is right in the sweet spot. And to be honest, I think it's a perfect balance throughout all the rules. Like, there's nothing higher than 15 sips for one rule. So considering the highest rule that we have is 15.
Yeah. Actually, come to think of it, the lowest is 8.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like a 7 sip difference, which is actually really well balanced in our part.
Very well. I'd say
good job, us.
Arguably our best balanced game in terms
definitely.
of rules. So no rule really takes over any other rules in this drinking game.
No, definitely.
It's almost perfectly balanced, as much as you can get it, really. Some of the, I guess, parts that give you more drinks is, like we mentioned in our video, anytime she goes to 60s Soho, it usually results in more drinking. There's people making advances, especially on Sandy. People are drinking at the bars. Sandy and Ellie are in the scene together. And Ellie waking up from the dreams or visions or whatever you want to call them. That all kind of happens within a decent 5-minute time frame or something. Maybe a little bit longer, but that's the only real thing that sticks out as to picking up for the drinking game. It's all paced pretty well throughout. Yeah. Spread out pretty well, too.
I mean, there's a few other rules that we could have considered, such as whenever a music cue happens, you take a sip.
Yeah.
And the main thing is the sound design was super well. It had, like, those 60 tunes, such as, like, the Beatles. Did it have... Yeah, Beatles, right?
Well, I don't even remember, to be honest, if it had Beatles.
It's been a while since we watched the movie, to be fair, but I'm pretty sure they had the Beatles. They had
a lot of 60s music.
A lot of 60s music, though.
To set the tone, for sure.
Yeah. Set the tone. It fit in pretty well, everything like that.
And I think that leads right into the production, to be honest.
Before that, like, even with us not adding in the, what is it?
The music cue.
The music cues, like... Would you want to? Because at the same time, like, the drinking game is so perfect in the way that we said, like, 8 to 15 drinks, all of them. Yeah. So well done.
And that's exactly why we didn't include it. And it's an
average drinking game, and average drinking games are perfect.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly why we didn't include it in the first place, is because of all the other rules that just work so well together. And this one, it was one that we thought of, and we always like to give you guys a couple extra rules just in case... Like, you want to make this extra hard on yourself. But the more rules you add, the harder it is to point them out as they happen. 10 we find is kind of the sweet spot. It's maybe a little bit hard at times to catch everything, but that's okay. You don't need to catch everything. It's just for fun anyways. So, like he said, this is a perfect balance, and you can add the music cue, but we just wanted to acknowledge that it was a rule that we were considering, I guess. Because of the sound design.
Yeah. Anyway, sound design.
Well, yeah, I mean, before we get in specifics about sound design, I think production as a whole goes without saying is top of the line. And, like, On IMDb, I noticed there was, I think, 69 awards that they were nominated for, and I didn't exactly count it out or calculate it out or anything, but I think probably about, I want to say at least 70% were production related, meaning cinematography, sound design, costume design, set design. I think I said that. All of the production behind the movie was just so, I want to say perfect almost, and that's why I was nominated for so many awards. Out of those 69 awards that it was nominated for, it did win 12 of them, which winning 12 awards for one movie is still a great achievement, I'd say.
For sure, yeah.
I'm honestly surprised that it's that ratio, 12 to 69.
Yeah.
But it's still an accomplishment based on how many they won.
So now let's move on to some of the specifics with productions such as cinematography. Where do we start besides saying it took you right back to 1960s Soho?
Oh, yeah.
Captures the essence, like, basically perfectly, I'd say, for the most part.
So.
I was very surprised by how well it was done. Edgar Wright did a phenomenal job with it.
Yeah.
Since none of his other horror, or I guess movies in general, are really, like, great with cinematography. Like if you think of other things like
Shaun of the Dead,
Scott Pilgrim,
yeah.
Like, they all have very unique styles. Like I guess it's a little bit in the terms of, like, quick pace editing. Like, you see Scott put on his shoes, or like Sean put on his tie.
Yeah,
things like that. It's very quick pace.
There's definitely a style that he uses, for sure.
But and it's none of that kind of shows in this movie. Sorry.
And it's not like he has bad cinematography in his other movies. It's just it stands out a lot in this movie to me, and it kind of took me by surprise because I didn't expect it from Edgar Wright. And I guess we should give credit to the actual cinematographer in this movie. It was Chung Hoon Chung. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but that's who did the actual cinematography, and he did a phenomenal job. He did some other movies as well for doing the cinematography with them. The Handmaiden and Oldboy. I haven't seen The Handmaiden, but I have seen Oldboy, and yeah, like, it's good cinematography.
What's
in that
Oldboy about? For some reason, that sounds very familiar.
It's like a Korean movie that got made into an American remake.
Okay.
I don't.
No,
anyway,
that's why I haven't seen it. I'm not the biggest fan of international movies. It's probably one of my worst horror movie genres. Anyways, let's continue. Working with the cinematography, the set design, costume design, all done very perfectly, fit the mood. Obviously, costume design, dress phenomenal. Tucker was really surprised that the drink that I made wasn't something out of Pink Whitney, which it's one of my, favorite drinks.
Yeah, actually, that's something else we should mention is I at least thought of another drink. I don't know if you had a couple that you were bobbling around, but for me, I was debating on just doing a simple Pink Whitney and pink lemonade inspired by the pink dress in this movie. And I was like, yeah, that would be a good one, but I couldn't resist just doing the Vesper because of that.
One of us had to do it, pretty much.
But
as much as we both... as much as I despise Vespers.
I don't love it. I'm not going to go out of my way to have one all the time.
Dude,
but you hate it more than me.
Every time I take a sip, I'm just like, okay, we have to try to get this down.
But yeah, it goes without saying, the set design, costume design, cinematography, all working together, really sets the tone for this movie and makes you feel like you're really in Soho in the 60s when it cuts to it. And it does a perfect job with that. And I guess enough about cinematography. We mentioned sound design a couple times already. Let's talk about that. We mentioned how music cues could have been a drinking rule, and the reason for that, like we said, is the sound design in this movie kind of elevates the movie because it's picked so well. Like, again, it just helps sets the tone for the 60s because the music they choose for Sandy to perform, the music they choose just as a soundtrack, it all works so well at putting you in that setting and making you feel like you're actually there, I guess. Yes. And I guess it's worth crediting Stephen Price. He was the sound designer, he did the sound design. He's also been a composer for other movies such as Gravity in 2013, Suicide Squad in 2016, and he also worked with Edgar Wright in the past on Baby Driver. And he worked in the music department in some way with that movie. I'm not exactly sure his role there, but yeah, he's worked with Edgar Wright before, and he did a great job in this movie.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good things about Baby Driver, and I feel like I've seen it before. And I always think of that, but I know I've seen Drive before, and that always throws me through a loop. Because I know exactly what Drive's like about, and like it's basically the main character who's, Ryan Gosling, right? Yeah. It's a Ryan. I don't think it's Ryan Reynolds.
It's not Ryan Reynolds.
But it's basically just him being like very quiet the entire movie. And I always get that confused with, like, I always get Drive and Baby Driver confused, so I never know what Baby Driver is about. But I feel like I've seen Baby Driver.
I honestly haven't seen Baby Driver, but I know it's talked about and praised very highly. And I would love to watch it. I just haven't gotten around to it now. But I think since it got brought back into my attention, just doing some research on Last Night in Soho and Edgar Wright in general, I think it kind of put it back into my... What is it? I'm now observing it around me. I'm seeing it around me more. So I'm like, I'm gonna go out and watch that for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing to note about sound in this movie, or music, whatever you want to say, it's worth noting for sure that Anya Taylor-Joy is actually like performing in this movie. There's no stunt
it's
double.
her own
She's not,
voice work.
Yeah, she's actually singing. Or dancing.
Oh yeah, dancing too. Yeah,
dancing and singing both are actually performed by her. Obviously, like, yes, she is lip syncing in the movie, but she's doing it to her own voice
song.
because that's just the way it works. You're not going to be actually singing it live while you're recording it. But like, it's just another thing that elevates it and makes it feel so much more genuine because it's actually. Whoever is playing that character is actually performing the stuff that she's performing in the movie, which makes it feel a lot more genuine.
Yeah, it's not voice edited. Like, what's a famous example of voice editing?
I mean, take your pick.
What's the one guy's name? Russell Crowe, is it?
Russell Crowe, yeah.
I think he was in a movie where his voice was heavily edited when he was singing.
Oh, for sure.
I forgot which movie it is.
I don't know either.
But yeah, I'm very happy.
I'm
very happy that they use Anya Taylor-Joy's voice, and it's actually so good that people are just like, "Is this actually her?" And they have to like look.
They have to research it. Yeah,
she has a good singing voice.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, speaking of Anya Taylor-Joy, it kind of goes right into the acting of this movie. Like, obviously she played Sandy. That's the character she was playing. What's your opinion on Sandy as a character and how Anya Taylor-Joy filled that role, I guess?
Anya Taylor-Joy definitely filled the role very well. It showed her stress and basically her coming to terms of what she was in the industry and then deciding to, I guess, spoilers, we already mentioned at this point.
Oh, yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for? Basically collapse in on herself and like snap and kill all these men that were taking advantage of her.
Yep. She kind of tried to defend herself and stand up for herself, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you mentioned dancing and everything like that.
Yeah.
Just a quick hit on that. The choreography in this movie was absolutely stunning.
Oh yeah, for sure. The choreography.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenes that for sure stick out in my mind for choreography, like
the first Soho scene for sure.
Oh yeah, when they first go there, that's very impactful because it's the first time seeing that set design.
Yeah.
And
you have both the Weasley twins at the same time with her and Thomason.
Yeah, that's actually like. It's an interesting fact that all that scene where they're going to Soho and for the first time, and it's the first time you see Eloise and Sandy together in a mirror. It's like a reflection.
It's a reflection,
but it's all done practically.
Yeah.
And the way they pulled that off, like you mentioned, is the Weasley twins, which I forget their name now, but we'll remember them. If we remember them, we'll bring them back up. But yeah, they were basically acting as the reflection. One was playing the what do you call it? The coat? No,
they were playing like the people who take the coat.
Yeah,
whatever you call
that, and the reflection of that.
Yeah.
So it worked out super well, and it just kind of again adds on to the care and effort that was put into the production of this.
And the dance scene in general.
Oh, the dance scene for sure, I think. And that's something that everybody mentions, is the dance scene.
Well, just because, like, it was done practically. And
so effective.
Yeah, it's basically just, like, what's the actors' names? Thomas and Anya Taylor. It's them just switching out, which is done so fluidly, you don't even notice.
Yeah, there's actually behind-the-scenes footage of, like, the wide-angle shot where you can see how they're just off-screen and swapping in.
Yeah.
There is a couple cuts, I think one in the beginning and one near the end, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me. But there's a couple cuts, but for the most part, it's all done practically, where they're coming in and out of frame together, and it's you don't even think about it when it's happening. Like, when you're watching it for the first time, you don't even think about it unless you're aware of it.
Yeah.
But the fact that there's no cuts and it's swapping between Eloise and Sandy so fluidly was the perfect word you used. And yeah, it's just, again, goes to show how much effort was put in to this. Like, it would have been so easy for them to just swap them in and out carelessly, just do some few cuts, and nobody would have thought twice about it. But because they put so much attention into it, it just elevated it that much, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to
Anya Taylor-Joy
and
her
the
role
acting in
and
general.
the acting in general.
And I think, yeah, she did a good job in her role playing Sandy, and she really made, I don't know about you, but for me, she made me sympathize with her character a lot. And also Eloise, she was sympathizing with Sandy throughout the whole movie. That's why she ended up almost wanting to go back and go back to Soho to try and find out the mystery around her. And, we got to see her getting taken advantage of. We got to kind of feel for her and from her perspective what was going on. And you felt bad for her, right? So she did a good job filling that role. I would argue that she might be the actor or character that stands out to me the most in the movie. I would probably say that for myself.
Yeah, no, I agree, for sure.
But, yeah, we see Jack making promises to her, and, she trusted him and believed that she would become a star because of him. And basically we see him kind of taking advantage of her, manipulating her, seducing her, and even forcing her into sex work.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess, that's another character, is Jack.
Yeah. He did a good job in his role. He was basically supposed to be, like, this charming guy from the beginning. But in the end, like, it basically showed how male dominant, like, how, males kind of control the industry and use, like, females to their advantage, such as, like, with sex work, as Jack did.
Yeah.
I feel like he was the character that people hated, and for a reason. But people like the character.
Well, you like the character, but you love to hate him at the same time. And I would say at the beginning, like, when you first get introduced to him, you think he's the nice guy.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
He's not a slime ball in the industry. He's actually there to help her.
Yeah, because
he's so
like
charming.
You see, like, the way that somebody's like, hey, can you have a dance? Like, no, she's with me, and, like, hits a guy, something like that.
Yeah, and he actually seems kind of...
like, stands up for her.
Exactly. And the way he's talking, he's very charming. Very manipulative, like we said. And he does a good job at making you believe he's the good guy. And as the movie progresses, we obviously find out he just gets worse and worse and becomes like, he's just the typical guy taking advantage of these talents, I guess I'll say. And yeah, his true character is just kind of uncovered for us, I guess, and unraveled. And it's handled very well. I guess we didn't mention, he's played by Matt Smith.
I thought we did.
I don't think we mentioned that yet.
But Matt Smith was in other things, such as, I think, Doctor Who is the main thing.
Doctor Who is probably the main thing that most people will know him for. But yeah, he did a good job at fulfilling the role and making us like him in the beginning and slowly making us hate him as the movie goes on. But I don't know that it's a standout role or anything. He just did his job.
Here's the other thing. that's so significant about this. It's like actual relationships where you think the person's like absolutely amazing at first, like they're willing to stand up for you and all this, but then you find out that they're a real piece of shit. Like it feels like an actual relationship.
Oh yeah, it's relatable for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so we touched on Sandy chasing her dreams, trying to make it in this industry. Jack is the one that I guess is trying to help her, if you want to say help.
Yeah.
Takes advantage of her, of course. And I mean, we have to talk about Eloise, which she's another person that's ultimately just chasing her dreams in this movie. And she's played by Thomasin McKenzie. And there's a reason that we had a rule where Ellie and Sandy were in a scene together. And it's because I think they relate in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Like they're both chasing their dreams, for example. And they're basically linked through the entirety of the movie, obviously.
You see them pretty much simultaneously. Furthermore, their storylines are kind of the same, moving into the big... I'm not sure if they moved in the big city. Coming into the big city with high aspirations for the most part, to not find out everything is...
It's not so glamorous.
It's not glamorous. People are shitty.
That's just it. They're both chasing these dreams, thinking it's all going to be, smooth. Maybe they'll have to work hard, put in some effort. Of course, they're not necessarily thinking that, but they're not thinking they're going in there to try and have sex to make it big or something, And I don't know. For me, I think Thomasin McKenzie did a decent enough job as playing Eloise. She wasn't a standout role in my opinion, but she filled her role and did the job that she needed to do. Like, there wasn't any point where I was like, you should have kind of maybe got somebody else, or she didn't fit right. I think she was a perfect fit for Eloise, but Eloise as a character just didn't stand out a ton to me, I guess, compared to someone like Sandy. And so, yeah, good enough job filling the role, but not the standout role in the movie, I guess.
Thomasin's such a weird name, and I haven't heard of anyone named Thomasin until I was oh yeah, that's Anya Taylor-Joy's character's name
exactly.
in the
I was just going to say that. She played a character named Thomasin, which was it's kind of a fun little piece of knowledge to know that.
Thomasin.
Yeah, they starred in the movie. And
yeah, I know it's really where Anya Taylor-Joy got her start.
Exactly.
I don't really know Thomasin McKenzie's other works. What is Anya Taylor-Joy's? Because it's mainly The Witch.
That's the only thing I've seen her in. Like, I know she's
in
kind of
Queen's
popped off recently.
Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. Yeah,
I haven't seen Queen's Gambit either.
I'm surprised you haven't seen that.
Yeah, I'm a big chess person. I haven't seen Queen's Gambit.
I've heard nothing but great things about that show.
I have too, and one of my friends was talking to my other friend, and he basically asked, why haven't you seen the Queen's Gambit yet? And he literally predicted the entire plot in front of his face, and he was just like, I guess that's why. But
fair enough.
Beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So,
but yeah, I haven't seen a lot of movies where Anya Taylor-Joy's in it, but I think this was kind of around. This isn't what caused her to pop off, but she's been popping off recently because of various works she's in, like The Queen's Gambit, like this movie,
like The Witch,
like The Witch. I'd say The Witch is
she's
probably
had some very, very good roles though.
Oh yeah, for sure, and she always does a good job in every role she's been in. That I've seen. I haven't seen everything she's been in.
Like, even from just like literally based on The Witch and Soho alone, like, she's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess back onto Thomasin McKenzie, and just a fun fact about it, I guess, about her as an actor or actress. She actually dropped out of her role in Maverick, which was released in 2022.
Like Top Gun Maverick?
Top Gun Maverick. She had a role in that movie, which obviously was maybe the biggest movie of the year.
Yeah.
Like, it was definitely successful, let's just say. But she dropped out of that so that she could kind of be the lead in Last Night in Soho, which I think was a fine decision. I don't think it was a bad decision. It's kind of comparing, like, they're both great to be in for different reasons, but I feel like she probably didn't have a starring role in Maverick. So this,
I don't think there's a no. I think of two characters she could be.
Which
Yeah,
are?
like a daughter of one of the girls.
Yeah.
So I've seen Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
And which is honestly kind of surprising because I've been to theaters to see 2 movies that aren't horror this year. And I don't go out of my ways to see movies that are not horror.
Yeah, same.
It's basically my parents are just like, let's have a double date with your fiance. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I really enjoyed Top Gun Maverick. So I'm very happy she took this role. Both were phenomenal movies. Recommend them both.
Oh, yeah. Like, I haven't seen Maverick. I've heard nothing but great things about it. I don't think it needs more praise than it already gets. But I'm glad she took Last Night in Soho. I think she filled the role well. Again, wasn't like a standout role. Didn't go above and beyond or anything. Like, she did her duties exactly what she needed to do and didn't make me think, oh, there could have been someone better. I feel like she did exactly what she needed to do. Yeah. Which is all you can ask for.
And, like, to be fair, I feel like if she was in Maverick, I don't think she would have dramatically changed that movie either. So she definitely took the high road for sure.
I think it was better for her as an
especially,
actor.
Like, this is a lead role. She wouldn't have been the lead role in Maverick. Yeah.
That's exactly why I think ultimately it was a smart decision. And I guess it's worth mentioning that Eloise, the character of Eloise, is based on Edgar Wright's mother. Which is kind of interesting to think about because Eloise as a character tries to follow in her mother's footsteps quite a bit. And it's interesting that it's kind of based on Edgar Wright's mother. So it just kind of has an interesting connection, I guess. And I found that out and it was kind of like, that's a neat little tidbit about that. But yeah, I guess there's one last character that we should talk about. One more main character, I guess. There's some side characters or some other characters that
the old man, maybe.
The old man, but
I feel like he's in some older works, but honestly, it's not horror, so I probably don't really know.
He's definitely in other works. I can't name any off the top of my head.
I don't even know the name. It doesn't appear to me.
I think first we talk about Miss Collins because, especially in the third act, is when we find out her role is a lot more prominent than we ever expected. She's played by Diana Rigg, and actually this was the last role she ever played because she passed away, unfortunately. She didn't even get to... Well, she may have seen the final cut of the movie, but the movie wasn't released.
She knew the twists.
Oh, yeah,
which was the good part.
I mean, she knew the twist, and she was there to act it out. Basically, she passed away after the filming and shooting was all done, and it was in editing, or maybe it was wrapped up at this point because it got postponed because of COVID or whatever. But she didn't get to see the official release out into the public, I guess. She passed away before it got officially released.
And she was like a big Hollywood star, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what other work she's been in. Probably not horror-related. Was she in something related to Psycho? I don't know.
You're asking the wrong guy, man.
We did an episode on Psycho. We should know.
We did do an episode
Either
on
way,
Psycho,
we'll assume not.
I don't know for sure what roles...
Wait. I got this. Okay, Google. What role was Diana Rigg in a horror movie? I was just going to say Last Night in Soho, isn't it?
According to Wikipedia.org, Rigg appeared in numerous TV series and films, playing Helena in A Midsummer Night's Dream, 1968, Lady Holiday in The Great Muppet Caper, 1981, and Arlena Marshall in Evil Under the Sunday, 1982. Do you want a little more context?
No, we're good.
God, Google makes life so much easier. I swear to God, most of my... the most use I get out of Google...
I didn't understand.
Goodbye.
Something related.
Google.
Goodbye.
Stop.
Influence our daily life?
Oh no, this podcast is off the rails now. Goodbye, Google. Goodbye. Anyways, let's continue.
I was going to say before that, this is the most use I've gotten out of a Google besides finding my phone. Continue.
I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever heard a podcast where they ask Google a question mid-podcast.
So we're going to be the first then, I guess.
We are paving the way for podcasts. We are revolutionary. Anyways, Diana Rigg in this role, I think she was definitely believable as this character, sorry. I don't think, I didn't really there was hints and clues, but I didn't really suspect her, especially in the beginning, of
There
being
were
Sandy.
very small hints and clues, but they were just enough to not put you on that trail.
Yeah, you didn't really catch on right away, but you could have if you were like really pay attention to fine details.
I watched this movie like 2-3 times and I still couldn't really find them all that much.
Yeah,
like it was
like,
super, super hard.
The only thing, there was a couple...
And especially to like basically, I'd say make the connections is such a stretch. It's basically the only connection you can make is like, she would be alive at the same time as Sandy, but it's like such a stretch to assume that Sandy didn't die.
Yeah. There was another time, and it actually might have been near the end of the movie. Actually, it might have been right before the fire burst out in flames in the house. Like, we'll get into that, but I think there was a time where Eloise saw Miss Collins' mail, and it was addressed Alexandra Collins.
Yeah.
And one of the times in the beginning, not the beginning, but one of those scenes where all the guys were hitting on her, Sandy introduced herself as Alexandra.
Yeah.
And that was one connection. I was like, oh, okay. That is a way you can kind of put two and two together. But again, so subtle and not a lot of things that give it away.
And that was at, like, as you said, like, as she had her tea drugged or whatever.
Yeah. And that was the third act of the movie for sure. So
yeah. So, like, that was, like, 2 minutes before.
Yeah.
Which is... You can't call. I wish there was more evidence with that. Like, her just, like, randomly screwing through the mail and, like, seeing, like, one of those names just randomly brought up. Like, the name not specifically mentioned. Like, if it was Alexandra. I think Alexandra was mentioned a little bit more specifically. Mm-hmm. Like, it was the cop or someone like that. Mm. It was like, I want to know what your actual name is. And she says Alexandra or something like that. But I wish it was just, like, one of those names that she said in, like, passing. Or, like, the first one she said. Mm-hmm. And then she started to use aliases. Yeah. I wish it was like that. Like, she used the first name and then just, like, you randomly saw it throughout the movie. Like, in the beginning of the movie, just, like, on, like, a board or something like that for mail for Miss Alexandra Collins. Yeah. And you saw it through that. And there was, like, something if you really paid attention for, you know who it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Maybe if I go back and watch this... Like, I've seen it a few times as well. But if I go in with the intent of trying to find the clues of Miss Collins being Sandy throughout, there's probably some hints, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Again, I haven't watched them. I haven't watched for them as I was watching this movie, but they're probably there, just very subtle. Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, I think that's the perfect way to go about a big reveal like that, like Miss Collins being Sandy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess we've been talking about this reveal.
this fucking Miss Collins shit forever.
But should we go on to the plot recap and our overall thoughts on it in general?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's best if we just break it down by acts.
Yeah.
3 acts. Starting with Act 1, it's basically character development for Ellie.
Yeah.
It also introduces a couple characters, which we'll get to, but we learn about Ellie's dreams and ambitions to become a fashion designer, which she's following in the footsteps of her mother, who killed herself when Ellie was a child, causing Ellie to be raised by her grandmother, which we see in the beginning of the movie, and she's very encouraging, and she doesn't play a major role. She's basically there in the beginning, and Ellie calls her a couple times throughout the movie, and then she's there at the end.
And that's the thing about moving into a big city, or just into a different city in general, like
away from your hometown. Yeah,
having your support just basically taken away from you sucks.
Oh yeah,
having to make a new life. It's some risks you have to make, but
exactly,
and not the ones you want to.
Throughout this act, we kind of start to learn that Ellie occasionally sees her mother's ghosts in mirrors, specifically, and her grandmother even knows this. She's very open with her grandmother. She tells her that she's seeing her mother, and her grandmother just assumes it's kind of a coping mechanism and stuff, which I think it probably is more than that. I think she might have some sort of ability, maybe.
I agree, and the reason that I agree is because she saw the shadow people like in the daytime,
exactly when
she was awake. Yep. So that's my logic anyways.
I think I do agree with you. They don't really expand on that all too much, and that's one of the things I kind of nitpick about this movie. We might get into that, but overall the first act is kind of just there for Ellie's character development, to know that she has this trauma with her mother and she has this kind of visions about her mother. We don't know about any of the other shadow people yet, but at this point we know about her seeing her mother in the mirror. And then we see her move to London to go to fashion school. I guess they have a very established fashion school in London. I don't know. I'm not in the fashion industry. Yeah. But she goes to this fashion school, and she doesn't really get along with anybody there. Jocasta is the main one.
Oh, yeah.
They really don't get along. I think there's only one person there that she even kind of gets along with, which is John.
Kind of. I mean, I feel like they get...
John, well, at first. At first. In Act 1, John he takes a keen interest in her, but she just thinks he's like everybody else and kind of just pushes him away. She keeps her distance from him.
Because, like, she made an imprint on, like, other people such as Jocasta, like the taxi driver.
Exactly. She's had a lot of bad...
She had a lot of... how would you call it? A lot of people, like, leave a bad taste in her mouth.
Exactly.
Kind of, like, right away. So she's like, I guess all these people are just absolute trash then.
Yeah, exactly. And so she just assumes the worst of John, which he's actually interested in her. He's trying to, I guess, form a relationship with her and not just take advantage of her.
Also, it's worth mentioning now that John is also the name as somebody who buys sex work.
Yeah, which is a very common thing in this movie, obviously. We learn.
Yeah. Speaking of which, it's also ironic that John has that name because he's probably the nicest guy in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's, I don't know if that was intentional or not. I want to believe it isn't intentional. It's just a happy coincidence, but
I want to believe it is. like I take either way, but I just feel like it's funny.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing, and I wouldn't put it past them based on the amount of detail they put into the production of this film that they did do that intentionally. But again, if they did, I'm surprised just because of how like small of a detail that is. But I wouldn't put it past them because they did pay a lot of attention to everything else, I guess. And I guess the last thing about this act is, just to wrap it up, it kind of just gives Ellie her backstory, introduces us to John, introduces us to Miss Collins because Ellie moves into her place.
When she immediately moves out. I love her scene with that. It's just like, I would never, ever like move out without giving you any notice, and she does like exactly that to Jocasta.
Exactly. Oh no, she does that to Miss Collins.
Well, she does end up doing it in the end, yeah.
Which we'll get to.
But like, it's funny that she does it to Jocasta, and like the way that it cuts is like her like having her suitcase and Anne just fucking piecing out.
Yeah, I mean she did. Yeah, true. But I think she meant it when she was talking to Miss Collins.
Yeah.
But yeah, on to Act 2. I guess, do you want to sum this one up?
Yeah. So Act 2. Sandy and Jack's stories are told through Ellie's visions and dreams. Basically, Ellie goes to sleep and sees Sandy's life kind of unfolding.
And she's kind of partaking in these dreams, too.
Yeah, I guess it's very physical for her. Like, she's dancing with Jack at the same time that Sandy's dancing with Jack. She's sleeping with Jack, assuming the same time Sandy's sleeping with Jack. So that's kind of interesting. So all these things that Eloise is feeling, she's feeling them through Sandy.
Right.
So when things start to get a little bit darker later on in the movie, she's feeling all these like bad emotions, like as so many people like basically using her for sex work. But we'll get into that in a little bit. She moves into the Collins house, Miss Collins' house, rather, and we see Sandy trying to get a gig as a performer in a club, and we see her sing Downtown, which was phenomenal.
Oh yeah. And
so that's, I guess, in order. We get her going into the club, meeting with Jack, and then her performing Downtown.
Yeah.
Very good. Both of them had, I feel like, just enough. It was a great call to, by the way, have Downtown strictly a cappella.
Oh yeah, as her audition tape or whatever. Yeah,
with no like instruments or anything in between.
Yeah,
I feel like it just hit super hard with that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
it is a little bit more impactful because there's no background music. It's just her voice alone, and it kind of just resonates better because there's nothing else to focus on.
Because like it's like Us, you see that Anya Taylor-Joy has a great voice. It's like this is probably what they're thinking too. It's like, man, she does have a great voice. She could be a star.
Yeah.
But there's at the same time as you look into it, like how many other people want to be a star in the city? How much room is there for you?
Oh yeah.
Continuing on though, Ellie pursues her life in fashion, visions, dreams to the point where she almost becomes obsessed with Sandy.
Yeah.
And her dress, she kind of takes inspiration from Sandy, so she starts to excel in her class because you're like, oh, this dress that Sandy wore is absolutely stunning, and she's like, and her instructor is basically like, oh, you're the best, keep going, girl, and like everyone's just looking at her,
but she almost becomes too obsessive over Sandy, and to the point where she's just
wanting
she
to go to
doesn't
sleep
know
at
what's
night.
reality and what's her dreams or visions that she's having, which is another reason to believe that she has these abilities.
It starts to overlap in the daytime.
Almost too much for her well-being. And I think they do a very good job of showing that. And it's just... Not only does she take inspiration from Sandy for her dress, but she ends up, after being praised about how it's going, she ends up kind of just destroying it and scrapping that whole idea as well. So it's like...
She like destroys the dress.
Yeah. At first she's enamored by Sandy and thinks, oh, this is perfect. This is what I'm going to use. Yeah. And then she starts uncovering more and more throughout Act 2 about Sandy and like the lifestyle she's choosing to live and what she's being put through. And then she's like, no, this isn't right for me to take... Again, kind of take advantage of her in a sense.
Right?
By... being like, oh, I'm going to rip this dress off, rip it off. You know, I'm using these terms lightly, but I'm going to use these as inspiration to pass my class and be top of class, blah, blah, blah. But she kind of almost realizes that, no, this isn't right for me to do, so she starts destroying the dress. And that's just another side note I thought about how she is just linked to Sandy very closely.
Yeah. I guess a little bit further along with that, we see Sandy partake in shady gigs, meet with terrible people that take advantage of her, drug her, get her drunk, seduce her, all this. And you kind of see the shitty side of, what would you call it? Everybody that wants to be famous, where like, there's a girl like ODing in the corner. There's one that's just like tying up to do meth. Or not like meth, what is it? Maybe it is meth. I don't do hard drugs, sue me.
I mean, it kind of just shows you the dream. Like,
yeah, it basically shows you like how all these there's a woman clearly blowing a guy. Like there's a lot of things that are happening in between. So yeah, it basically shows all the downsides of being in like that kind of scene that she wants to be in. It's the industry. That's the word I'm looking for.
It shows you the lifestyle.
And how those women are also being used, just like
exactly. Especially when you're an up and comer. It's kind it's kind of showing you what you need to do to make it big in this industry.
The quote unquote what you need to do.
Yeah,
so, like,
I mean, it's fucking...
what people like Harvey Weinstein is like, oh, if you want to get a big role in the movie, you have to do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it shows the shitty side of the industry.
Yes, it's not all fucking flowers and rainbows. And this again does a good job of showing that.
Yeah. But yeah, and then we can also see how countless missing men have been found and vanished without a trace when she starts to do her like research.
Yes, Eloise. She starts
when she starts to like collapse and like her visions start to take place in reality.
Yeah, they kind of start going in and out.
And she almost stabs Jocasta with a pair of scissors.
Yeah, because she thinks it's a shadow person or a ghost or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of it's not the first time we see the shadow people, but it's when it starts getting push in our face more, where we start seeing them more, is at this point.
And it's very subtle, though. You start to see a lot of men going missing. Which is obviously Sandy, as we know, but you don't really put two and two together, especially since it's just like so fast. She tries to look, who's all been missing in 1960s Soho, and it's just a bunch of men. It's not Sandy or anyone.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, in the main vision, we see Sandy obviously murdered by Jack, as Ellie believes she knows who Jack is in real life, as she keeps seeing the older man at the pub who works there and is accusing her of murdering Sandy and all this.
Yeah.
Partway through the movie, we found out that he's a former police officer who tried to help Sandy by encouraging her to leave the prostitution industry.
Yeah,
he gets hit by a car.
Yep. He gets like I guess frustrated with the accusation.
The thing is, I feel like the main thing is he has to clarify. Is like, I tried to help the Sandy person, bitch.
Yep. Oh yeah, and we'll get to that. Spoiler alert for this podcast: there might be a Darwin Award nomination.
Oh yeah, no, we like Darwin Award nominations.
But yeah, this is kind of the thing I think that caps off the second act. It kind of starts getting into the climax and stuff. It's Eloise accusing the old guy. I think his name is it...
Do we even remember?
Fuck, I don't know. I don't remember.
We're supposed to go back to the actor, but I feel like he's in some other famous works too. Back in 1960s. Which I feel like is very suiting because actors such as Diana Rigg were like famous back in 1960, like when they really hit their stride, and I think this guy was too.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sorry, I don't remember his character's name or the actor's name, but anyways, that's besides the point. This is kind of like you said. We saw Jack being murdered by Sandy. Eloise believes that's the case, at least, and we see it through her visions. That's what's happening, and it kind of leads us right into Act 3, which is the true reveal of Sandy and Mrs. Collins. And we already mentioned how Miss Collins is Sandy, and this is kind of where we start to piece that puzzle together, I guess.
Yeah.
So Act 3 is kind of, like I said, the reveal of who Sandy truly is and Miss Collins, them being the same person. It's kind of where we start to see Eloise basically in a panic. She's super stressed out based on the discoveries that she's finding about, all these missing men that we see in Act 2. She thinks that she thinks that Jack killed Sandy.
Yeah.
She thinks she knows who Jack is, being the old man. And it leads to her just being overwhelmed with all of this information that she believes to be true. So she tells Miss Collins that she's leaving London, even though she told her, I won't leave without giving you a good notice.
Right?
But anyway, she's leaving on a dime. She's like, no, I'm sorry. I know I told you I wouldn't leave, but I got to go back home. I got to leave London. Got to just leave all of this shit that is just caused me too much stress. So she tells Miss Collins that, and meanwhile, Miss Collins, knowing that Ellie is kind of starting to catch on to what the true story is, because...
she asked earlier, did anyone die in this house?
Yes, exactly. Eloise she didn't confide in Miss Collins, but she asked questions that would lead to maybe uncovering some truth.
I guess there's also some other clues saying that Miss Collins is Alexandra, or Sandy, I guess, rather. The first one being that obviously she lived in the house for years.
Yep.
The second one being that like there's a stink in the summertime or something like that.
Yeah, there's like a weird smell up in that room.
Yeah. I think there's another one, but honestly, it slipped my mind.
Yeah, we'd have to watch and try and piece it together,
it's
knowing the final twist.
It's hard to think with the Vespers.
You're like maybe half done. Look at how much I got. I got a few sips.
You're a tad bit thicker than me too.
Oh, okay. Is that a fat joke?
I mean, technically.
Yes.
I'll just say it.
Anyways.
You want to make it offensive, I'll make it offensive.
Yeah, okay, fine. We're going to fight after this. Anyways.
Coming on DAZN soon.
Yeah.
Continue.
Anyways, because Miss Collins is catching on that Ellie is kind of beginning to figure some things out that she shouldn't. She drugs the tea, and Eloise starts getting a little bit loopy. And this is kind of... like, she drugs her...
Oh, that was the other thing. Sorry. She said she's always lived here, or she's lived here, like, forever, pretty much. Something along those lines.
Right, yeah.
Okay, sorry, continue.
Anyways, the reason she drugged her, ultimately, is so that she can kill her. Just to keep her silent, so that, nobody else catches on or tries to investigate in some way. She wants to keep everything under wraps. And it's when Miss Collins ultimately reveals that she is Sandy, because she's kind of, it's already pieced together at this point. Yeah. And this is where we learn that Sandy was not actually killed by Jack, and rather it's the opposite, where Jack was killed by Sandy.
Well, I mean, so in that perspective, Miss Collins said that Alexandra died years ago.
Yep, she did say that. And because she changed her lifestyle, basically. Yeah. She wasn't living that life anymore, and the way she did that is by killing Jack.
Well, I guess basically her innocence died too, right? There's a lot of ways to look at it.
True. And I think she kind of had no other choice, because Jack was basically her pimp at this point.
Yeah. And it's also fair to say that Jack was going to kill her. We didn't know full perspective, but from what it looked like and what we can gather as an audience, it still looked like Jack was trying to kill her.
It did look like that was
definitely... And that's just I'm trying to think of the exact word for it. Battered woman syndrome?
I don't know.
I think it's battered woman syndrome, where it's basically a woman kills her abuser and more complications in the legal system.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. As somebody who's I'm not getting abused, but if I was somebody who's getting abused, I would wish nothing but harm on the person that's doing it to me, right? So you don't want to continue living that lifestyle, so at first you're going to be blinded by it. You're going to be living a lie, I guess.
It's an unthinkable lifestyle, to say the very least.
Yeah, and
it's unideal.
And this is the way that Sandy kind of tries to escape that lifestyle by killing Jack, who's kind of set her up as he set her up for failure in this industry by his approach and being very manipulative and seducing her and just taking advantage overall. But at the same time, this is kind of where we learn that she didn't only kill Jack. She killed all of the men that kind of took advantage of her.
All the shadow people. Yeah.
She was luring them. Basically, now she was the one seducing and manipulating these guys. She brought them back to her room up there and then just killed them. And she was storing their bodies in the walls and in the floorboards. Yeah. Which, questionable move.
It's an opposite Robert Pickton. If you know who Robert Pickton is, he's a Canadian serial killer who murdered prostitutes.
Yep. But that's kind of this is the point where we learn that that's what the shadow people are. They're all these missing men that we found in Act 2. There's countless missing men. The reason they're missing is because Sandy killed them and kept them in her house. Yeah, hiding them in the walls and in the floorboard, under the floorboards, and all of that, which leads then, I guess, to the fire starting that we mentioned. Ellie knocks over an ashtray, I think is what happened. There was a scuffle happening between Miss Collins and Ellie, and then an ashtray gets knocked over where there's a lit smoke, and it lights up maybe the record collection or something. I don't know. It starts the fire. Anyways, there's a fire going on in this house. And that is the point where John, who's waiting outside for Ellie, because
he's just what's happening?
Yeah, he realized something's going on because A, Ellie's taking too long in there, and B, there's a fucking fire starting. So he goes in to check it out, and
gets stabbed.
He ultimately gets stabbed by Miss Collins, and after he gets stabbed, it kind of almost helps Eloise escape upstairs to the bedroom, because she's able to kick Miss Collins off of her and run upstairs, and that's when she learns what Sandy really was going through. She sees all these shadow people, and they're all basically begging her to kill Sandy or Miss Collins because they were killed by her.
Yeah.
So they're like, please kill her,
But the thing is, Eloise kind of suffered through all those events with her. She's like, I know what you're going through.
She totally understood what Sandy went through, and she empathized with her, so she refused to kill Miss Collins.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. She
she's
doesn't
like
deserve it.
She's even just like, come back out with me. And she's like, nah, I'm just gonna have a nice nap in this bed.
Yeah. And then, Miss Collins eventually makes her way up the stairs as well. And she also sees the spirits that Ellie is seeing, the shadow people.
Yeah.
And that's when we see, like, up until this point, Miss Collins has the upper hand, and she's the dominant one in this little scuffle. Mm-hmm. But we see the spirit or the ghost of Jack strike Miss Collins, and then immediately after she gets struck by this shadow figure or ghost, whatever you want to call them, she immediately kind of cowers in fear, and she loses all the dominance that she has in this situation. So at that point, she tries to slit her own throat, but Ellie stops her and say, no, don't kill yourself. And
so he just causes her to burn in the fire instead.
Well, and then that's when Miss Collins tells Eloise, save yourself, go and save John. She didn't know his name, John, but go and save your boyfriend or whatever. And just save yourselves, and she decides to stay in the fire, where ultimately she obviously will burn to death, putting the end to her life and this, I guess, Sandy chapter, Sandy story. She puts an end to all that, and it kind of is the resolution where we kind of just see a bow put, like the gift is wrapped, the bow's put on nicely, and then we get a final scene where Eloise made it in the fashion industry. She's now dating John. It's confirmed.
Yeah.
Her grandma's there for her first show, and it's going well. She's successful in the show, and then while she's backstage, she looks in a mirror and she sees her mother and Sandy both in the mirror as like ghosts, visions, whatever. And at this point, she's kind of finally able to cope with this ability that she possesses.
Yeah, it's basically at that point is just kind of that, like it's kind of confirmed for me anyways that you see Sandy, she sees her mom, she sees the shadow people. Yeah. So I feel like it's confirmed for sure that
definitely.
that she sees the shadow people and everything like that.
Oh yeah, she definitely sees them, and that's another reason why we thought like for sure this is an ability. It's not just her going crazy or something. This is just something she's able to do, and yeah, it just kind of wraps up the overall story of this movie, I guess. And that being said, like, what's your thoughts? Just first thoughts that come to your mind about the way that the story progresses, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. What are your thoughts on it?
I feel like it was pretty perfect, to be honest. I won't go into too much detail because I want to hear from you first, and then I have something else to add to that.
Okay. I mean, there's a reason, and if you've been around our channel for, a year now?
Yeah.
There's a reason we both rank this number one for the 2021 movies. And, overall, this is my favorite movie of that last year, and not even just of last year. It's one of my favorite modern horror films, just because of the way that it's shot and how well it's shot. All the production behind it was clearly cared for, and there's a lot of attention to detail, I guess, which always elevates the movie for me apart from the storyline. Like, the production, if it's great, it stands out to me, and the fact that they incorporate it with a good story, telling Sandy's story, telling Eloise's story, and combining it all together, they did it really well, and I just really overall liked the movie. And
what I was going to add to that is kind of covered it. Movies from 2021 that you liked. Obviously, I think both of us liked Soho the most.
I think that was number one for both of us. The next one was Malignant. And, there's I mean, we did a whole
Has anything
stream.
changed in between that? Do you like more movies, less, more movies, more?
I haven't gone back and thought about it, to be honest. And there's not many movies that I have gone back and rewatched.
Some of the
from
movies,
2021.
some of the movies that I sat on that I liked more The main one being the Night House. I like the Night House a lot more, sitting on it.
Oh, yeah. I think we even rated it A tier, though.
Yeah, I think we should have rated it S.
Maybe.
It's really good. But yeah.
I mean, go back and watch that. We did a whole stream. I think we covered in between 30 and 40 movies, somewhere in there.
36, I think.
36? You know the number.
I could be wrong. Well, I remember it's because as the night progressed, we had like a lists and like all the numbers were... They were numbers. Numbered, yeah, they were numbered for like a brief synopsis of each movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, before we wrap this podcast episode up, let's go into our Darwin Awards. Mm-hmm. We have to do that. So, let's just list off these nominees. We got 3 nominees today.
Yeah. It's
between Ellie, Miss Collins, and the Old Man.
Mm-hmm.
So, the reason we're nominating Ellie...
Actually, I wanted to add one more.
Okay.
Which I just thought of, like, talking through a lot of this. The Shadow People.
Okay.
The Shadow People are fucking stupid.
We'll get
into that number 4. Anyways, Ellie.
Number 1, Ellie. So the reason we nominated her is because she was accepting a drink at the party from Jocasta that was likely drugged. Obviously, she wouldn't necessarily know that beforehand.
Yeah.
But she never liked Jocasta, and right from the beginning, they just had this tension and, beef between them. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like they didn't like each other right from the beginning. So the fact that she's buying you a drink is a little bit suspicious. So the reason you're nominated is because you accepted this drink after all of that unfolded.
Yep. Let's move on to number 2, which is Mrs. Collins. Mrs. Collins is nominated for letting Ellie live in her house while dead bodies are stored in walls and floors where her murdered victims are.
Yeah.
You think you'd have a safer place to get rid of those bodies,
well,
and not let the floorboards stink in the summer months.
It's not just that; it's letting somebody live in your house
where there's basically a crime scene everywhere.
Well, literally, there's dead bodies under the floor.
You step on a moldy floorboard, and it's over.
Or there's a little crack in the floor, and then whatever, you kind of go looking at it, and then you see something down there, like, what is that under there?
Like, oh, that's a skeleton.
Yes. So it's just a dumb move altogether. Yeah. And we know she intended to kill Eloise in the end, but that doesn't matter. She
intended to kill Eloise after she
found it out. I know. Yeah. But yeah, it's just a dumb move altogether. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the 3rd nomination, the Old Man. Again, don't remember his name, but he's the whole movie when he's clearly, like, Eloise is clearly suspicious of him, acting a little bit, like, timid around him, doesn't know what to believe about him.
He's always talking in, like, almost tongues or, like, vague.
Yeah, well, that's why he's nominated, is because he's extremely vague when he's talking to Ellie, which is causing her to suspect him of murdering Sandy.
Yeah.
And it ultimately led to his death, where he storms out of the bar angry at Ellie's accusation, and he gets hit by a car and dies. Yeah. So
he could have just been like, yo, I'm a police officer. And like that whole thing could have just been wrapped up.
Literally. I don't know why he didn't. It's fucking stupid. He just was like an angry old man that he didn't want to, I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to relive the olden days, I guess, in his case.
Shadow People, though, number 4. The Shadow People are going to be on the list for Darwin nominees for basically asking Eloise for help, scaring the shit out of her, and making them think that they're the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of similar to the Old Man, how they were just made out to be the bad guys. And I mean, they were bad guys because they were taking advantage of Sandy, but all of a sudden they just kind of flip of the coin, just be like, no, I'm sorry, please, like, just kill Miss Collins. It's like all of a sudden. And you could argue that,
just like you could have said that from like basically minute 1.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, and she'd be like, what happened? Things like, I don't know,
definitely could have.
Yeah.
But you could also argue that that's just Eloise's perspective changing, because she found out who the real Miss Collins was. So at that point, she's like, okay, she found out Sandy is actually murdering a bunch of people. And maybe it's because her perspective changed, that she was able to see these shadow people as victims in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's kind of... You could argue that, at least, I guess.
Yeah.
But in terms of who should be crowned the winner of this Darwin Award, do you have a strong feeling one way or another? I have a strong feeling.
Let's scroll up just a little bit.
So we got Eloise,
okay.
Miss Collins, the old man, or the shadow people.
I'm thinking of a few.
I mean, we only have 4, so a few is 75% of them.
Yeah, that's why I said a few. I mean, I can think of strong case, like Ellie, permissible, but I feel like, okay, yeah, go
with Ellie. I think she could just be assuming the best of somebody and be like, yeah, she's buying
it could
me a
be
drink.
Water under the bridge.
Yeah,
right?
she's trying to like make amends, you know. And so I don't fault her for taking a drink too much. Still probably a dumb move. I mean, obviously it was a dumb move in hindsight, but even in foresight, like, probably a dumb move. But still, she's assuming the best of somebody. So I can't fault her too much for that, but she still deserves the nominee.
Yeah.
Miss Collins, I guess I'll say it right now. I think she deserves it the most.
I was going to say Miss Collins is my main pick too.
I'll say why.
If I had to choose.
I say the old man doesn't deserve it because
I'd
maybe
say
he's
second most. Like
it's arguable for sure why he deserves it anyways.
I'd say
like we
solid
talked about.
2.
But the reason I'll give him a little bit of a pass is, like we mentioned, he might just be a grumpy old man that just doesn't want to deal with the past anymore.
Yep.
So he's like, fuck off, get out of here. I don't want to deal with this shit. I already dealt with this way back when. I'm not reliving this.
Yeah.
So that's his mindset. I'll give him, I think he's probably thinking that. That's why I'll give him a little bit of pass. The shadow people, like we mentioned, it might just be Eloise's perspective on them. They might not have been harming her. They might not have been trying to harm her.
I guess it could have just
beginning.
been the perspective, yeah.
And we don't know for sure. And that's why I think
But I mean, just like yelling at her, going, like the thing from, what's the movie I'm thinking of? Where it just, the ending scene is this guy with the curly hair just like shouting at the girl. Body Snatchers. There we go.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. It feels like they were just doing that the entire movie, and it's just like, that's not helpful.
It isn't helping anything. So that's why they were nominated.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know. It's like Eloise just assuming the worst out of them, so it might be a perspective thing. Her perspective changed, so they changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Miss Collins. I think she deserves it the most because outright, it's just stupid. Keeping dozens of bodies in the walls and in the floorboards
and renting your house
renting it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's stupid enough leaving the bodies there in the first place. You could probably cover them up a lot better. But the fact that you let somebody come and rent the house when there's a weird smell also going on, and they can just simply, like, even if they fucking
like if they had a
the house
dog,
or they fucking bumped the wall and the drywall got a hole in it by accident or something, like, you know, there's different ways that they can uncover this, and it's like, why would you put yourself in a situation to get uncovered, for somebody to uncover the truth? If
you're a serial killer, you want to do like everything in your power to probably not get caught.
Exactly.
But she's just like bringing people into an evidence locker pretty much.
Well, exactly. And that's why I think she deserves the nominee or the winning title.
Oh yeah, she deserves the Darwin Award.
Yeah, so Miss Collins, congratulations, you won the Darwin Award.
Yeah. Sandy,
I guess.
Anyways, that wraps up our look on to Last Night in Soho that was released last year in 2021. Long and short of it, we strongly recommend this movie if you haven't watched it yet, as it was probably our most recommended of 2021.
I guess we never officially rated it.
Yep, if you want to do a quick rating out of 10.
We'll do out of 10.
Yep.
My rating is 9.5 out of 10.
I would say somewhere in between 9 and 9.5. I'd say 9.
9.25 then?
Yeah, 9.25 if I wanted to go that detailed.
Yeah, like overall, obviously we recommend this movie, and I think the only thing that I can nitpick about, like we mentioned, is not getting a little bit more explanation as to why Ellie sees these ghosts or shadow people.
Yeah.
Like, why does she have this ability?
Yeah.
That's the only nitpick I have about the movie. It doesn't take me out of the movie or anything. It's just when I really think about it, like, I can't rate it a 10 out of 10 for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair.
That's probably one of the few things that would put it at a 9.5 instead of a 10.
Oh yeah, definitely. Anyways, yeah, congratulations if you made it this far. It's over an hour in. Thank you so much. We're proud if you stuck along for the ride.
Proud and appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. Next movie we're going to be looking at is going to be a Christmas horror movie.
Yeah.
We're not 100% sure, but if you were to stick around this long, odds are it's going to be the Advent Calendar.
Yeah,
made in 2021 as well. Tucker's seen it. I have not seen it, so it's going to be my first time watching.
First time for you watching, and I'm curious to see what you thought about it. Mm-hmm. If you want to know what I thought about it, you can go back and watch our 2021 Best and Worst Movies of the Year live stream. We did rank it, and I'm not going to tell you what we ranked it because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's
a movie.
It's a movie, and we if you want to kind of watch it before we, dive into it, this gives you time to watch it. But
I mean, obviously, I'd say they should watch it. I haven't watched it yet, but I'd say they should watch it because
you should definitely watch it to be in the loop with our next videos that we're going to release.
Definitely. Yeah.
But in the meantime, this is us saying goodbye. Thanks for tuning in, and this is us saying cheers to fears.